Morning, welcome to Sacred Enzyme. I'm Stacy. Hope you're doing well today. So I have some interesting stuff that I want to talk about with you all today because I've had some really interesting astral experiences this week. And so I want to rewind a few days ago because it's been about 3 days, maybe 4 days. I'd have to go back and look at the exact day. But I was in astral and I was told that a new archetype was being introduced into the field, and I was like, okay, I gotta tell one of the girls that I work with a lot on the channel because she's a wolf archetype, and so I've been mulling over that ever since that happened. Trying to figure out, okay, what exactly are they meaning about the archetype, the new archetype that's being introduced in the field? And I would just get massive downloads lately. And so my journey has been becoming a lot more clear of what I'm supposed to be doing here. So I want to talk about these archetypes. And I've been getting a lot of questions about, they don't understand what I mean by archetypes because the way that I try to explain things is I try to explain things in a livable way instead of a lot of fantastical stuff, so I want to talk about these archetypes like as a thought experiment and forms of function. So I say forms of function, and that means an action. So it's a role. It's like a job. It's an operating style that's in the field. Okay. All right. So when this experiment began, we were an embodiment of everything. We were at the center point. Okay. This center point was the containment of all the forms of function. All of the archetypes were embodied in Source. Okay. When Source expanded out, all of the archetypes, all of the different forms of function of Source separated. Okay. These separations of form of function were necessary in order to have the experience. Okay, so we have different archetypes. They all represent cycles on the clock. They all bring their form of function into the clock to move it along in a particular way. We embody what we want. We embody what we want the field to manifest. Okay, so as long as we know that we're navigating, we can navigate. All right. So a wolf does not function like a dove, guys, okay? They're obviously different embodiments of function, right? A serpent doesn't function like an eagle, just like you can't put a farmer on a spaceship, okay? It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It means that we all are performing a certain function here in this cycle, right? You've had many other cycles that you've embodied all different kinds of form of function, okay? This particular time, you're embodying a form of function. You may be embodying multiple forms of function, and this is what we're going to get into when we're talking about it today. If you only had a world full of builders, obviously the world would become very sterile, right? We can't have a dominant field of one archetype. It has to be balanced, guys. It has to be balanced, okay? If you only had a world full of people that were warriors, it would become destructive. If we only had healers, then we might be vulnerable. We've seen this happen in these stories that we've heard about Lyra and all of these different civilizations. A planet full of healers doesn't protect themselves, right? They're missing the bird's eye view. They're missing the lioness or the wolfness, the guardians, the boundary protectors, okay? So the point is not which archetype is best, but what function is needed at this point in our cycle, guys. So if the 13th archetype is connected to the wolf, right? We've talked about the 13th archetype being connected to the wolf. Then maybe the 14th archetype begins to bring in the bird. Now hear me out. The bird's different, and it has aerial perception. It sees from above, the bird's eye view. It can see the pattern that the wolf may only be tracking from the ground. So then you have to step back a minute and say, okay, Odin, right? This is what comes to mind. We've got wolf and raven imagery, right? We have two archetypes. So are we sitting and looking at Odin like in the form of function that he should be? He's a realm bridger, right? He brings in the bird cycle from the wolf cycle, right? A lot of you guys that are following this stuff and you know that you're connected to this wolf cycle and these wolf bloodlines, you have a connection with Odin. A lot of times I hear from people that say, you know, they have some kind of Norse connection or they have Asian connection. And, you know, these two groups are somehow connected together because the primordial mother of earth, she embodies an oriental appearance is the only way I could say it, because I don't know exactly where she takes her looks from, but she has skin that's white as this paper, and she has hair that's as black as coal, and she has almond eyes, and she has a beautiful round face, and she looks very youthful, like childlike. So, you know, I've never seen her body, and see, this is what's gotten me on this. She's covered in a wolf fur, like a blanket that looks like gray wolf fur, and it's long and silky soft. And I keep thinking, maybe she hides her body because it's a bunch of different archetypes, right? Her pixelization into this form might be like the spider mother. Maybe she has a spider body. We don't know. This is an embodiment of archetypes, guys. It's an embodiment of archetypes. This is why they shape-shifted in the old times, because the original forms were animal forms, guys. It was the embodiment of that archetype. So what we think are just animals running around at one time, these were forms of function, guys. These were forms of function. This is why a cat doesn't do the same thing that a bird does, and a dog doesn't do the same thing that a fish does. It's because they're all different archetypes, and dog is man's best friend, guys. And it's in the stars, and it's in the stars. Okay, so we're going to get to that. So now we're talking about a transition phase right now, from wolf to bird, from grounded instinct, embodiment, survival, and tracking, because this is what we've been doing up to this point. We've been looking at pattern recognition and stuff that's starting to come into our focus. And a lot of people have felt like they've had a leash on them, right? They've had their throat seized. Like, I've always felt like I've not had my voice. And I know a lot of people that embody the wolf and the bird archetype, you have had problems with your thyroid. You have problems with your glands. It's because the archetype had to be introduced into the field to unlock your throat, guys. This is what it's about. It's about archetypes coming into the field in order for us to embody it. Okay, so we're going from wolf to bird. Overview, higher perception, pattern recognition, and navigation, guys. We've got to be able to navigate, right? We've talked about the liminal space, the in-between space. This is Odin. He's the wolf and the raven. He has two perspectives. He has two perspectives. Okay, so this is very important, because at a transition point in a cycle, maybe humanity does need both, guys. Maybe humanity needs both. We need to be grounded enough to stay embodied, but we also need enough wisdom to be able to see the larger pattern here, guys, that's unfolding. So what if a serpent means one function, a bird means another function, a wolf means another function, a lion means another function, and then when they're combined, they're showing us a combined form of function. Okay, so I started looking at these. We've got Zalamoxis, which we've talked about Zalamoxis on the wheel, right? The wolf serpent, right? Zalamoxis is the wolf serpent. This could represent instinct plus transformation, okay? And I keep saying that there's these two archetypes that's coming into the field, which was going to be the wolf and the serpent, right? But what if it's the bird? What if it's the bird? Because the star alignment that happened. So wolf and raven could represent grounded tracking plus higher perception. Serpent bird could represent earth and sky integrated together. Serpent and bird integrated, sky and earth. Lion plus bird represents rulership plus divine vision. Dove and serpent, peace and wisdom. Dragons could represent serpent power with wings. grounded force that can also rise. So when we see these figures in mythology and in the architecture, right, because they're everywhere, maybe they're telling us just like what is the form of function that was operating in the field or that cycle at the time. Think about it, right? So this is where I keep going back to the loom and mother's clock, because if time or civilization is moving like a loom, right? And I talk about us, we've been in a 12 by 12 system, and it's time to turn the wheel and ascend. You have a lot of this mythology about these cycles ending, and the serpent and it's eating its tail, and then the story of Ragnarok. I was talking to Taki from, she's a channel member, and she's become a very close friend of mine. We were talking about this yesterday, about the serpent's tail breaking free, right? Well, what if this is the story that's talking about us actually moving into the cycle, right, of the Fibonacci, right? Where's my pointer at? So if we're talking about the story of the serpent not losing its tail, we're talking about a transition phase, right? Where we finally go from constantly going in a loop to actually going outside of the loop into the particle implosion phase, where we're ascending, right? Where we're moving the gear, moving the clock, right? So at the end of at one cycle and the beginning of another cycle, there's a handoff. There's a handoff, and it shows in the archetypes. It shows in the archetypes. The serpent eating its tail is a closed loop, the cycle continuing again. Flushing the toilet, starting over. Flushing the toilet, starting over. But if the serpent's tail breaks, what if this symbolizes the end of the loop and the possibility of us stepping outside and going into the spiral instead of repeating the same cycle? Think about it. So are we looping again? Are we spiraling upward? This is the question. So is this why the bird serpent symbols are so important? The serpent is as close to earth as you can get, guys. It moves on the ground. Its embodiment, cycle, shedding, renewal, hidden wisdom, and transformation. And the bird is above the earth. It sees from the air. It has perspective and navigation. It represents vision, message, spirit, and of course pattern recognition, being able to see what's going on, guys, and navigate accordingly. Right? So when a figure carries both the bird and the serpent, it's holding the highest and lowest points of duality in this axis. Think about it. Earth and sky, like Earth Mother, Sky Father, just like in these mythological stories. Ground in heaven, embodiment and vision, cycle and expansion. And this is an integrated archetype. And so we see this. In the past, we've seen it. Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, Hermes, and Mercury. He's the winged messenger with the serpent staff, guys. Athena and Minerva. We got this owl and serpent wisdom. We got Horus, right? Horus is the solar bird and serpent imagery. And then we've got the Nagas and Garuda. That's that bird and serpent polarity. We've got dragons. These are flying serpent bodies. The Caduceus, which is wings with two serpents. We got eagle and serpent emblems. And we got phoenix and serpent style rebirth symbolism all over the place. So these are not random images. They keep showing up because this is a function, guys. This is the ability to connect what is above and below. So this would be like the reunification of particle and anti-particle Earth, guys. So let's talk about how this connects to our heraldry, because it's everywhere. Family crest, flags, coats of arms, the emblems, they were basically the family's resume, guys. Before someone even got there, you could see their symbol, and it was advertising what their forte was, guys. You didn't want, certain jobs. You didn't want certain archetypes doing certain jobs, right? If you needed somebody to protect you or a mercenary, you were definitely not looking for a churchy dove archetype, right? You didn't want to look for a family crest that had a cross on it, doves and olive branches and all that stuff. You'd be looking for a wolf or a lion, right? You'd be wanting to look for somebody that had some gumption, that could fight. You needed peacemaking and connection and nurturing, you'd look for a dove, right? If you need strategy, Rome didn't have the double eagle for no reason. They were all over that strategy, right? You could, you could pretty much bank that Rome was going to come out on top in the day. They were the double eagle. That was their perception, a bird of prey, basically. I just got a thump from Theo. So if you need transformation, healing, renewal, or hidden wisdom, you might look for somebody that carried that serpent wisdom, like the Welshes, right? The Welsh had the red dragon on there. Old bloodlines, guys. It's serpent embodiment, guys. It's serpent embodiment. So, some crests carried multiple animals and multiple symbols because some of these lineages went way back, guys. They went way back, and they were carrying multiple functions, just like my family. I'm a blending of multiple forms of function, and it makes me interesting to the programs, right? I have bird coding. I have high pattern recognition. I have wolf coding. It's in my family bloodline. I have my mother's side and my father's side. My mother's side, she also has serpent coding. She has serpent coding because they're Welsh, right? They have, their last name is Royal. But, I have serpent and bird coding on my mother's side, and my father's side is also bird and wolf. Bird and wolf. It's Kennedy and Randolph. Kennedy, Randolph goes all the way back to Rollo. And then we have on my dad's side, we have Marjorie, Countess of Carrick. She goes back to these old Gaelic lines. And then the husband that she was married to, that my bloodline comes from, not King Robert, King Robert's mother, with a different father. Mine goes back to Adam of Kildare. I think he must have been a Templar or something because he fought in the Crusades. He was a knight, but he got killed in the Crusades. But he had one daughter with Marjorie, Countess of Carrick. And I think that she's one of the magic numbers, is because she's carrying this Celtic, early Tuatha De Danann, Celtic, this bird coding. This bird coding, it was one of the first Earth archetypes, one of the first ones. They came through the sun. This is a diamond sun, as they talk about in the Keylontic material. Diamond sun coding. Diamond sun. I kept telling my teacher, I said, I think I'm all of these together, because, when I first started taking that class, Theo just thumped me. When I started taking that class, the reason I seeked it out was because I wanted to be a minister of the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order. I knew I was supposed to be a minister, and then I was supposed to teach this information. And so that's why I seeked him out. But as I started learning about these different coded bloodlines that came in, over different times, they call them Diamond Sun, Ruby Sun, Emerald Sun. I realized that I was all three of them. It's just because, I had to have this coding to be able to come into for my soul expression. It doesn't mean anything else. It just means that's what I needed. I needed all of those codes to be able to come here for this timeline to do what I'm doing. So, we're all coded for our purpose in this timeline. So, a crest wasn't just your decoration. It was a visual language, and it told people about your archetypal current, your role in society, your function, and how your family group was identifying. And so this is why this matters today, because we're not here all to do the same thing. Everybody has a purpose. Everyone carries a different form of function. We have builders, guardians. We have healers, gardeners, visionaries, storytellers, protectors. We have people that are bridges. Sorry. We have people that are bridges. And so, a healthy world is not a world where everyone comes with the same archetype, guys. A healthy world is a living system where all the functions know how to work together. The pollinator is not the predator, guys. A river is not the same as a stone, and a wolf is definitely not a dove. So when we're talking about the 13th and the introduction of the 14th archetype, we are really asking, what are we being asked to embody now? Because the other night they told me that they were introducing a new archetype into the field. And, maybe this is what we're being shown right now, is that we need to figure out what archetype it is that we need to be embodying for the next transition stage, right? So we're talking about 14. So do we need the wolf? Do we need the raven? Do we need the serpent, the bird? Or do we need integrated versions that can hold more than one function at once? Right? So if we're looking for 14, right, this is pressure on the hero's journey, because 13 is where we had the heart integration, right? So we're stepping out, right, and we're being given influence from 14, the archetype of 14. So the question is it an amalgamation of multiple archetypes? Because we're having a form of influence, a function that's pushing us on our spiral, on our hero's journey. So what are we becoming capable of carrying? What are we up for, guys? Maybe the answer is we're being asked to become more integrated, right? That maybe we're being asked to integrate another aspect right now, that we need this new archetype coming into the field, because we're at the 13 point, guys. The 14th archetype is being introduced, and I think it's the bird. So when I looked up in the sky last night, I walked out there, I saw an alignment with Jupiter, Venus, Castor, and Pollux. Castor and Pollux are considered twins, right? Venus and Jupiter are both embodiment of bird archetypes. Okay? I had literally just been talking to Taki about this, and I had showed her this artifact, which I'm going to change screens and I'm going to show you. And I realized that what I was seeing in the sky was the exact same pattern that was on the artifact that I showed her earlier in the day. Because this is how we got into this whole conversation, because we started, I had said, you know, last night I was told that they were introducing a new archetype into the field, right? So she and I were talking about that, because I only get bits and pieces. You know, Theo tells me a catchphrase at the end. So when I wake back up, I'm not forgetting everything. He wants me to remember because it's really important. So he really wanted me to remember that the archetype has been introduced into the field. And so I immediately started talking to her about what this could possibly mean, right? So when I walked outside yesterday evening, which was interesting, because after I realized that this archetype was being introduced into the field, I was basically told, okay, your throat opened, right? Your throat opened, and now it's time for you to tell your story. It wasn't the right time for the people that are bird coded to tell their story. So if you've been embodying in this wolf archetype all of this time, and you have this Odin connection, and you know, a lot of this stuff comes up in your field, you're a dualistic archetype. I really do think so. The wolf bird, the Odin archetype. And you're a cycle carrier. You take the one cycle into the next cycle. When we choose embodiment to the 14th, when we choose embodiment to the 14th and we go outside of the circle and we go into the spiral, that is when the archetype was introduced of the wolf raven, or the wolf bird archetype, ending the cycle after breaking it down, right? Breaking down all of the fiction and then starting fresh from a high perspective, right? Rebuilding the golden dawn, right? So I realized that this is what the transition phase is of Odin. This is why Odin is tied up with Tyr. He is a transition character that goes from exiting out of the system. This is why he willingly dropped himself down into the third dimensional space as a sacrifice, as a guide, to guide us out, guys. The bird and the wolf work together to transition out the system from being in a constant loop, the serpent eating its tail, to the breaking of the serpent swallowing its tail. This is when we go into implosion. So we have to embody dualistic archetypes at transition phases on the clock. And right now we are at one. So when she and I were talking about that, I walked outside. I was going to sit down and take a phone call because I'm going to tell my story. And I said, if there was anybody that I wanted to be able to tell my story for me, I really wanted Jane Celia Hatch. I really admire her a lot. There's something about her. She's totally bird coded. She's a bird archetype. And I told her last night, I said, it's time for you to step into your purpose is right now, because your archetype just got activated. You know, I feel very strongly. Thomas Massey, he's also bird archetype. You know, if you think that Thomas Massey's going away, you're wrong. You're wrong. He's a bird archetype. He's a bird archetype. And, you know, if you don't know anything about Thomas Massey, I'd advise you to go back and watch where they shadowed him on his farm. And at the beginning, I thought it was funny because it shows a camera following his son up a thing with a t-shirt, and the back of it says Lewis Construction Company. And Lewis, Meriwether Lewis is also the family that was part of the Randolph family. They're wolf-coded, guys. They're wolf-coded. So yeah, Thomas Massey is. So I realized that when I walked outside to sit down and take the call and talk to Jane, see if she even would interview me. You know, it's a lot, guys. It's a lot, right? So I look up in the sky and I see that arrangement. And I was like, that looks just like the artifact. So I want to show you this artifact because I really think that this arrangement is totally about what just been put in the field. And I went back and I went up to ChatGPT and I was like, there's an alignment that happened I seen last night in the sky. And so I sent the picture and it really looks like an arrow shooting up, right? You've got Jupiter, Venus, Castor, and Pollux. And it looks like an arrow. And you know, that's so funny because the primordial mother and an aspect of her, Minerva, has told me over and over again about this arrow, this metaphor about the arrow, that we cannot do anything if we're an arrow without a bow, right? We have to have a form of function to make the arrow go. You can't shoot an arrow without a bow. Otherwise, it has no force, right? So there always has to be duality in the three-dimensional system until we ascend out of it and we reunify with our anti-particle self. And then when we do, we won't have to live in this dualistic. We can be in the embodiment like she is, the embodiment of all the archetypes, right? She has all her earth archetypes. So then that makes you think a step further. So does each planet have archetypes that you have to cycle through to have full embodiment? And you know, when I was in my other timeline where I'm a teacher, I teach a mystery schools, and my husband's also in that timeline. He's like a counselor of some sort. But I was at the dean of the college. I was in his office, and he showed me this gold plate that was sitting on his desk, and it looked like the Beastie coin. And now I keep thinking back on that, and I keep thinking, okay, what he was showing me was all the archetypes, the earth archetypes. That's what the school is about. It's us embodying all of them and getting out of the system. And then we go to another system and we graduate here. So right now we're taking this system into a higher octave, but everybody has a choice, guys. They showed me that. They showed me that. But, you know, so I've started learning and being shown exactly what I'm supposed to be doing here. And, you know, I've already said in the past that, you know, Theo and I, we were one light being, that we came out of the primal sound field, that we came from the primordial field. You know, we were just like light. And then we decided we were going to do this experiment, and we became dualistic in nature. You know, we separated from one androgynous being into two, and we've taken turns mirroring each other throughout many earth lifetimes. But I know that I'm supposed to be closing cycles. I close cycles on planets. And Earth, I'm an earthling because I come from the Earth Mother when she introduced the archetypes to Earth. When she introduced the archetypes to Earth, some of us took single form archetypes. My family bloodline that I'm in now is the wolf. But I've always been known as a midwife. I've been a midwife for eons, for babies, for seeds, for nature, for anything that is life. That's what my job is. And I have a very strong connection to Venus, and now it's starting to make sense, right? And these wolf archetypes, right? So Mother Earth, I think she's telling me about this twinning because of Castor and Pollux. And off to the left, as Taki was saying, she had an epiphany that this arrangement is also right next to Canis Major and Minor. So we've got the whole configuration of Odin. Odin with his twins, with his wolves, with his ravens. It's a system that appears in the sky, and it introduces a new archetype into our field. If we embody it, guys, step into your purpose. Those of you who are being called to travel, you need to do it. You need to do it. Put your trust in your oversoul. Talk to them. Ask them to make it happen for you. Let them help you fulfill your purpose here. Your archetype has been activated. If you're bird coded, you can go back and look at your family names. It'll have to do with different types of birds. It'll have to do with light. It'll have to do with rays, silver, colors that mean white light. You know, it is coded everywhere in the families. And so if you're being called to travel. You're activating nodes all over the planet. You're working in your purpose. This is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be igniting the grid. Your archetype has been switched on. Those of you who felt like you just couldn't step in and just get going what you needed to go, and that you're in communication and you're in different types of perspectives that are not mainstream, right? It's your time now. Your archetype hadn't been totally activated yet, but it is now. Your bird coding is activated, guys. So we do have this connection with Venus and Jupiter. So, 14, archetype of 14, I think is a Jupiter aspect, which is the eagle, guys. And, and then we have this important connection with Venus, right? Which is the swan or the dove, which is love, harmony, right? So we have these two forces, right? We have this nurturing earth principle, and then we have the sky principle, guys. We have the heavens and the earth, and then we have Canis Major and Canis Minor off to the side, the dog stars, guys. Dog spelled backwards, God, right? So let's go back, and I want to show you the star alignment from last night. Hopefully I won't mess it up by sticking my hands on it. But do you see the 3 stars? You should see the 3 stars on the top and then the one below, right? That's Venus, top left Jupiter. Then you have Castor and Pollux. All right. Looks like an arrow. Okay. This is the artifact. Okay. All right. So if you see in the top middle right there, the top middle, you see all the notches on there? It looks like our cycle clock, guys. And then if you look to the left, if you look in the very center, it looks like a Fibonacci spiral. See that? And then if you look on the right, you'll see 5 lines, which 5, we've talked about 5 representing Venus, right? And then we have this pillar in the middle, right? We have the dog. It's holding all this up. The wolf. So to me, this looks to me like this alignment that I just saw in the sky. Venus, Jupiter, Castor Pollux, or Venus, time cycle, alchemizing archetypes on the hero's journey, or is it saying that all of these 3 things together is bringing in an archetype for ascension? I mean, you can really look at this so many different ways, but this looks just like the celestial alignment that I looked at. And the interesting thing is that that exact arrangement in the sky happened the night that they told me they're introducing a new archetype into the field. So I really think that we got to look at this more. We got to look at this archetype that's coming in and how we are embodying it, and how everybody has got to take that step, guys. It's time to fly. It's time to fly. The bird beings are back. Like we talked about, the return of the bird tribes. They're back, baby. The birds are back. Ken Carey. If you haven't ever read this, well, I just knocked half the shit off my bookshelf. But the return of the bird tribes, right? The Native Americans have talked about this. This is the time. This is the archetype just came in. So maybe this is when they talk about the red star or something like that, the red sun that appears in the sky, it has to do with this. I'm pretty sure it does. So, yeah, so I've learned that that I don't want to call it a council, because I've been told in the past over and over again that I'm an elder. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I know that I've been in rooms or in spaces where I'm being shown what's happening, like from an upper level, like this is what's being implemented. You know, they debrief me on stuff, or they show me things on like a screen, or like the other day when they told me about that archetype being introduced, they showed me a contract. So I was like, okay, so these beings actually are going into contracts to activate on Earth. So it's really interesting and definitely warrants further exploration. So with that, when you come and find me, I'll be here. We're living in past, present, and the future, all at the same time. Don't forget to get outside today. Put your feet in the grass. Give thanks to our Heavenly Father and Mother Earth. And don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. This channel is dedicated to the universe and the awakening of humanity. It's a nonprofit channel. Let's support the channel by liking and subscribing to the channel and sharing the videos. Hurts nothing, costs you nothing, but a moment of your time that you'd be probably scrolling on to something else. So if you've been with me all this time for 38 minutes, I thank you. And we're all in this together, guys. We're all in this together. So please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you'd like to contact me directly, my email address is hstacy90@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your stories, and I speak to anyone for free. There's no charge for any questions that you know, you're looking for help, or I help everyone willingly and from the heart. I don't put a dollar figure on spiritual knowledge. So with that, I hope to catch you on the next one, guys. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching Sacred Enzyme. Bye-bye.